Song, Granny.
Okay, I don't know what you want me to talk about, but if you will just kind of let me know, we'll try to discuss some of my childhood days.
I'd like to know, to start with, about your parents, about your mom and daddy, and how they were raised, how maybe anything that you could.
I really don't know where my daddy was born, but I think it was near Pierce County. I can't think of the place, but anyway, then he moved to Camden County, or Camden and Franklin County. I really don't know how my mother and dad met. My mother was born in Townsend, Georgia, and dad was about 8 years older than she was. But they had a very, very wonderful life, if you could call it wonderful. They were the parents of 10 children. One daughter died of the 4th child. It was a little girl, and died at 6 months, which was a terrible tragedy to them. And then so they raised the 9 children. There was 3 boys and 6 girls. We grew up on a farm and we made our living on the farm. But we were happy. It was hard work, but we were tired, we'd go to bed at night, we went to sleep. We always had an abundance of everything that was necessary. There was very few things that we had to go out, to get, because we raised all our vegetables on the farm, and we canned all summer to take care of the winter. We would have 1,000 probably cans of fruit and vegetables.
1,000 cans?
Big jars, 1 and 2 quart jars, because it took big jars for that big family.
Sure. You can't for 10 people. And
in the winter time, we would kill, very coldest weather. You didn't do it until the weather was extremely cold. And then you would hear them getting wood and firing up the pot to scald and clean the hogs in. And they would go out and kill maybe 10, 12, or 15 hogs in one day. And you'd spend that day butchering, cleaning them. They'd hang them up and had what you call gallows, cross gallows, and you'd look out there and there'd be 4 big old hogs hanging there. And probably didn't cut them up that day. As I said, the weather would have to be cold, but they would put them in the smokehouse or somewhere, and it would take 2 or 3 days to get all that meat salted, because you mixed salt and pepper and stuff and rubbed every piece of that meat, the hams, the shoulders, the middlings, and of course you took out the parts to make sausage. So you made sausage and you had to season those and with all the good old seasonings.
Did you use the internals for casings and all that? Or?
We absolutely did, and I said absolutely.
Absolutely.
Tori doesn't like me to say that. Yes, we did. Oh, that was not my favorite job, but I did help a lot. And it seemed to always fall my lot to have that girl do that.
Where was farm out, and how did Granddad come about it?
I don't know how he came about. He bought it, but it was partially it was right on the Camden-Franklin County line. And so he had property in both places. If we went out our front gate, we were in Camden County. If we went out what we called our back gate, which was on the side of the backyard, we were in Franklin County. So we
Did you pay taxes in both counties, or not at all?
We paid taxes in both counties, but we went to school in Camden.
Because that's where the band rooms were.
Well, the house was, over in Camden. The house was in Camden, and so we went to school in Camden. But it was always a busy time. We didn't have a lot of close neighbors. But we were always having relatives in to stay. During the Depression, we'd have a whole family move in at times and live with us for months. Mom had a brother and his family that would just move in and live with us.
Did Granddaddy acquire the property all at one time, or did he buy pieces to join?
He did not, he kept buying. Acquiring different little tracts, small tracts at the time, really. And actually, they moved in the house I was raised in. They had a house across, really a long house across the road. And as soon as I was born, they waited until I was born. Daddy built a new house while Mother was carrying me. And after I was born, they moved over into the houses there under the oak trees that y'all.
So you were born in the log house?
I was born in a log house.
How about that?
And we later used it for cornbread.
Well, did y'all ever know anything about the plantation? Anything about the history of the plantation?
It was originally Old Salter Plantation, and I really don't know much of the history of it. I do know that for a mile or so behind the house and off to the Brantley side of the house, there was always the indentures of the rows where they had farmed. Of course, it was grown. I don't ever remember anything but big trees on it. But even with the big trees on it, you could still tell that it had been farmed, yeah. And I really don't know that much. There is a black cemetery down behind the house that some of the graves date back to 1700 something. And they still bury people today. And I know it's called Salter because when I would hear news that some of the blacks have died and they're bringing them back to Salter burial. So it was just hard work, and we had a lot of love. My mother died when I was about 12 from surgery.
Tell them why she died. Because they didn't have penicillin.
She had surgery. Actually, she'd been to Brunswick to a doctor and for several times.
My dad works in consumer.
And he prescribed surgery for her, and Dad thought he needed. She and Dad thought they needed another opinion, so they went to this specialist in Waycross, and he said the same thing. So. She had the surgery in Waycross. And she had it one Monday, and we visited her during the week.
Okay.
And the way we went, there were so many of us. My brother drove a school bus, so we just all loaded up on the school bus. We was only one or two at the time, there for a few minutes, but we did visit with her a lot on Sunday. And she was planning to come home. And
You did the right thing, Charlie.
we were all excited about that.
Getting beat up.
And Monday, she took a sudden turn for the worse, and they operated again. And this was before the days of penicillin or any kind of drug, and she had gangrene, which is blood poisoning. And she lived till Thursday and died. And we all thought our life had ended. And momentarily, I guess it did. But next day there was the same things to do, so we got busy doing it. There's a lot of merit and hard work. It can get your mind, help get your mind off a lot of things. So we made it. We had a wonderful daddy that he actually tried to be daddy and mother to us. He was just a wonderful, wonderful dad.
What was your mom and daddy's full names?
My daddy was James Robert Kelly.
I think I got it.
And my mother was Hattie Harrelson Kelly. Harrelson.
Harrelson?
I've always seen it, and I think Harralson is the right. I've seen it spelled E-L other ways, but I think that's the way it's pronounced. And she was, as I said, born in Townsend, Georgia, and how they met, I don't know, but she had relatives right close the Sand Hills. The
Might be on
Rosiers.
picnic.
The Rosiers. Her mother was a Rosier. And she was Uncle Ben's, and Uncle Will's, Uncle Jim, Uncle Dave's sister. So her name was Martha Ann.
And he was a kid.
My other grandmother was named Martha Ann. Both of my grandmothers were.
I know, it's just that we're just
So they fell in love and married, and they were always in love.
pretty upset if I have to leave.
They really and truly were always in love. Her family didn't really think it was the best catch for her, but they all came to love him and depend on him. That's the kind of person he was. I mean, he really was,
Rapunzel.
True blue.
he was true blue, and they all came to just be crazy about him. But most of them had a lot more than he did.
Tell us
Yeah.
tell us about almost owning Hialeah, a racetrack.
Oh,
Jake.
Aunt Dolly, talking about Aunt Dolly, yeah.
Grandma's
Dolly was
sister.
Grandmother's
Billy. Red.
next to the youngest sister right there. I think Aunt Bella was the youngest. And she was, lived in Macon, and she worked for, I can't
There's only one more spot.
but anyway, she designed hats.
She was a
a
milliner.
And she would just send us, every season, we get this giant, bigger than this table, full of hats. I mean, I'm not talking about sun hats. I'm talking about
I wanted to play.
high fashion
I have this here.
hats.
Actually, I've
We
already.
wear them
Wear
in
'em
full
in
field. When Mama dressed up, though, she looked really great because she would save hers from, and dress up. I can see my mom now in those plush
All those who fit me.
Plume hat.
navy things with a big old plume over it. She was a beautiful woman. She was very dark, had a very dark complexion. She had blue-gray eyes,
Loophole.
and she had never had her hair cut.
Or he's the worst athlete than I am.
She never had a haircut. It was almost to her knees and back.
Oh, really?
When she died, there was no gray in it. It was cold black.
Well, is grandmother the one that had the Indian heritage?
There was some Indian somewhere in the Harrelson background. And if you look at the Rogers, they all got those high, dark complected, high cheekbones. Oh, I don't know whether it came from Martha Ann or Kenneth Harrelson. I'm not sure that was.
How old was she when she passed away?
She died at 49, and I had a sister, my oldest sister had just graduated from high school,
Yes, they're talking.
and
Definitely.
so she just
Actually, from a conversation.
stayed at the kitchen and at the washboard and the sewing machine,
Tell me.
and she did everything that grandmother would have done had she been there. And she punished us if we were ugly, and sometimes she punished me when I wasn't even, I didn't think I was ugly. But I came in for my share, I can tell you that. We were just alike, I think that was the trouble.
Tell us about your daddy. You talked about him a little bit a while ago, but tell us about him. Tell us what you said y'all had a farm.
A
Just tell us
farm,
about
and
it.
we planted everything, tremendous garden, because I told you earlier that we ate the year round out of the garden. In the summer, we would have the usual butter beans and peas and tomatoes and okra and squash and peppers and all the trimmings. And then in the winter, you planted cabbage and turnip greens, mustard greens, collards, whatever. Of course, you had sweet potatoes that you did gather in the fall. And you put those in bags. We would have probably 6 or 8 big old bags. This big, and oh gosh, I can't reach out.
Potatoes.
Of potatoes.
How do you
we
do
would
that?
put the straw on the ground, and then they'd gather these sweet potatoes, and they'd pile them up, just as high as they could pile them, and it'd be like this shape. And then they would cover them with clean pine straw, just a thick thing of pine straw over it. and then they banked dirt. Covered
And that
it.
would keep
Oh,
it.
they would keep, and you have never tasted a potato that tastes like that. Potatoes now are not potatoes. You would cook them, you fix a big old pan full and put them in the oven, and you couldn't get them from the pan because of the syrup.
Because they caramelized.
Oh, well, the sugar just cooked out of them and cooked down, and it was just like syrup in the pan where you would cook them. And they would be so sweet. They were just, there's just no way you can identify a sweet potato now with the sweet potatoes that I grew up on. And when we need sweet potatoes, we just go, dig a little hole and reach in there and get a bucket full of sweet potatoes.
Go back up.
Go back to the house, pull the straw and the dirt over and go back. And the next time you wanted something, you did the same thing.
Well, tell us about him. Was he a boisterous man? Was he a soft-spoken man? What was he like?
Soft-spoken man. There was nothing boisterous about him. He was just an easygoing. His motto was that you do unto others. He had very little education. I think he probably went to the 3rd grade, but he was very smart. He read magazines, newspapers. He'd read the newspaper. He'd read it from cover to cover. I'm sure, there was a lot of words he probably didn't know. I've often thought about that. And it was amazing to me that how he could discuss, the things that he read, but he had very little education, but he was very smart. And he was very steady, even-tempered, but his work, he just did it all the time, but he was never in a hurry. And he just stayed at it. He didn't rush like we did to get all this done before, he didn't do it. Every day he just set himself at a pace and he went all day. But you never saw him doing anything in a big hurry. But he farmed and they worked in, with timber. My brothers were growing up and they worked, some of them worked at the sawmills as teenagers.
Earlier there was 10 brothers and sisters all total?
There was 10, I told you, the 4th one died at 6 months old. It was a little girl named Inez.
If you don't mind, would you mind listing them for us? Maybe in order, like from
Okay, I'll start with the oldest to the youngest, okay? Otis Earl was the first one, and Kenneth Elmore was the second. Pearl is the third. She's the one that I told you that after Mom died, raised us, finished raising us. And then Inez is the little girl that died. And then Annabelle. And Annabelle and Spencer Felder. And Dolly Louise. And Bonnie Yvonne. Martha Madeline. And Dorothy Ellen. That's the 9 that live. Now there's only 3 of us left. Annabelle and Edna and I.
And this is Christmas Day, 1998. What is it? 98, Christmas Day, 98. What was life like for you? What was a typical day like for you when you were growing up? What did you do? I know you had to have things that you were responsible for doing. What did you do?
I don't remember too much until about I started school probably at 5. Before I was 6. Back then we had actually it's the same thing. We had a year in the primer called primer. And then you went in the 1st grade. So, it's the same thing, I guess. I don't remember an awful lot up until about the time I started to school.
How many years did you go to school?
Well, I graduated from North Camden High in 38, but I graduated from the 11th grade. We didn't count the primer, I guess. I don't know. I actually went to school 12 years like everybody else did.
Right.
But I graduated from the 11th grade. And going to school was really a trip because we had to ride a school bus. There was no paved roads. It was all country, dirt country roads, and a lot of them were long, boggy swamps that you had to go through. And sometimes we made it through, and sometimes we didn't. They'd have to come rescue us or something when we didn't show up. So it was quite a trip. There was a lot of people that lived off the main road, and we would have to leave. We were the first ones because my brother
Drove the bus.
and we'd leave before daylight. But before I did that, I had to go with my mom when she was living to milk the cows. I had to go help her tend to the cows, which we had in every year. My dad would clear new ground, making the farm bigger, and you would bring the cows, over and put them in that new ground at night to fertilize it. And after we gotten it cleared up, we would
How did they do that? No.
we would pin the cows over there, and back then the way you milked, you separated the calves from their mothers at night, okay? So they couldn't nurse all night and get all the milk, okay? And in the mornings, we had rail fence. You'd put the fence down and let the calves go into their mothers and start nursing. And then I would have to keep that calf from its mother while my mom milked the milk. And you did this on ice, You did it if it was raining because you had to tend to the cows. And that's what I did before I left to get on the school bus to go to school in the mornings. And as I said, most of the people live way back off the main road. We'd have to go through those really little pig trail roads to pick everybody up. We were on the main thoroughfare, but a lot of them weren't. And it just took 2 hours or 2.5 hours to get to school almost.
How about after school? What did you do when you got home?
Well, there was always chores, and we immediately came in and changed our clothes. We got in our work clothes, which didn't consist of jeans. It was dresses. We did not wear pants.
You didn't wear pants at all?
The men wore pants. The women wore dresses, skirts.
And that was that?
And that was that. And there was no conflict. There was no controversy about it.
That's just how it was.
That's just the way it was. And nobody ever thought about it being any other way. And as I said, there was always chores. Mine were usually outside. There was wood to get in, which I helped to do. And there was stock to tend to. The men usually didn't get in until they worked till dark. And so I would do a lot of it. We had everything imaginable on the farm. We had mules, we had horses, we had cows, we had sheep, we had goats, we had chickens, we had ducks, we had turkeys, we had guineas. There just was hardly anything.
You had sheep. You had sheep?
We had sheep. We had quite a big flock of sheep, and every year we'd have to gather them up and they would share them. We usually didn't do it at my house. We usually did it at the house the farm next to us. But the men would all get together, and for days they would share sheep. Just one behind the other, cut all in. When they just have bags of this wool. Don't ask me what they did with it. Washed some of it and used it for bedding.
Really?
Uh-huh. And we also saved feathers.
For bedding?
For bedding and pillows. I've got some feather pillows at my house now that came from the farm.
Really?
I really have.
So
And you don't get those anymore.
No, you don't. So that's what you did. You
So that's
did
what
whatever needed to be done.
Whatever. And we knew what we had to do, and we did it. We weren't told every day to go do. You say that and people think that your daddy must have been hard on you. He wasn't. We just totally respected him. We adored him. And we wanted to make him happy. We wanted him to be happy. We wanted him to be proud of us, and he was. He really and truly was. I'm not talked out.
When did,
Let me ask you a question. You said a while ago you took the school bus to work, to school. Uncle Elmore drove the bus.
School bus.
Tell Kelly about the bus. It's not like the bus of today.
Well, don't think, well, he eventually got a Bluebird, but the first ones had flaps on the windows, you know, like plastic, but it was
Canvas.
It was a canvas thing with little snaps that you they usually stayed torn, you know, and wouldn't the fastener was broken. It was cold. You bundled up, you know, in the warmest things you had, which was always a big coat. We always had a heavy coat and heavy shoes, heavy socks, and other than that, just ordinary.
You'd have to leave before daylight.
We'd have to leave before
And
daylight.
you get back home after dark, probably.
Almost dark. Just time to do, if you
Do your
rush, you
chores.
get your chores and get in. And then at night, we'd have to do the dishes after dinner, after supper. We called it breakfast, dinner, and supper. It isn't like that anymore. You know, you have dinner at night and lunch in the middle of the day. Well, yeah, sometimes you might hear me say supper or dinner.
I like supper better.
But when we said dinner, I meant
Midday.
dinner. You know, we set the table.
What was your average dinner, supper like?
If there was leftovers, we might have them at supper. But if not, there's no telling. It might be biscuit and grits and fried ham.
Might be about the biscuits. They were there at every
The
meal.
biscuits were there usually twice a day. Cornbread was made twice a day. We always had hot bread. And if there was leftovers, they went on the table at supper. But if it was not a lot of leftovers, we cooked and
usually cook?
cook something else too. Finish it on out. As I said, we lived hard, but we lived well.
You would have, a typical supper would be what?
A typical supper could be most anything.
Fried steak?
There was always,
What did you like? What was your favorite typical supper?
I'll tell you what my typical breakfast was. It was wonderful. I told you I had to go to the cow lot and do all this stuff. Go back to the house and there would be a big bowl of hot grits on the table, a big platter of hot biscuits on the table, a big platter of ham or bacon or sausage, or maybe all three.
But the thick sausage, not like they do it now.
Maybe all three. It was according to what we had going, if it was during the butchering season, you just had a lot of goodies. And we always had those candied sweet potatoes, big old pans of them. And my daddy, your great-granddaddy, and I always had one for breakfast with our hot grits and ham or sausage or bacon and eggs. And that was typical cereal. We did not know what it was. We didn't, unless oatmeal, we might have oatmeal once in a while. But we didn't know about cereal.
Which one would have been your big meal? Would that have been breakfast or
Supper?
No, actually dinner.
lunch? What?
We concentrated. There was a big meal in the middle of the day. They got up early, they were hot, they were tired,
I'm hungry.
and hungry. They worked in the fields or in the woods, and they were hungry. So we girls spent the morning, we might go out and pick whatever is growing, the peas or the beans and the okra, the squash, or the turnip greens or whatever. And come in, wash them, shell them, whatever you had to do to them, and have a big old pot of that, or maybe all that.
So when they came back,
With cornbread and biscuit and rice and
Homemade
So when they came
fried chicken.
everything was homemade. We raised the chickens, we had the eggs, we milked the cows, we had the butter, We had the buttermilk, we had clabber, which I adored, you call it yogurt. It's just a glorified name for it, I know what it is.
So they were expecting, when they came in from the field at lunchtime,
They knew.
they were expecting more than a tomato sandwich.
They were expecting more than a ham sandwich or any other kind of sandwich.
That's what you took back with you.
They didn't know, you might take a ham and biscuit back with you, but they didn't know what a ham sandwich was.
Oh, y'all didn't have bread, y'all didn't have bread like
Where you
we.
gonna get bread out there like that? You mean sandwich bread? If we did, we saved it to take to school instead of biscuit.
You looked highfalutin at school with a piece of bread, wouldn't you?
Rich
Oh,
people.
man, we'd get the biggest crowd we could find to have lunch when we had library.
How about your lard canned
Large.
lunch?
I didn't have to take lunch.
You didn't like it?
Elmo and them say they did, and they went to a little one-room school across from Wayside, the old Bland Plantation. They used to walk over, they came through the woods, but they used to walk to school over there. I didn't, but they did, and I guess they probably took those kind of lunch buckets. But I didn't, I don't think I can even remember having a lunch box. I always took it in my bag or something. You save your bags and use them for.
How did you save meat? What did you do to save meat back then?
Oh well, you cured it.
In a
The
smokehouse?
porks, we had a smokehouse which was about the size of this room. It'd be.
About 20 by 15 or so?
It might not have been quite as big, but it was pretty big. And you butchered your pork, and the men would go out and get bear grass. Do you know what bear grass is?
No.
It's really like Spanish bayonet, but it grows out in the woods from plants, and it doesn't grow up big. But you can't break it, and they would cut it and string those, cut holes in the middlings and put that through, and you hung up your meat on poles in the smokehouse. You would have, just like those things up there, you would just have that with middlings, and the next one would be ham, and the next one would be sausage all the way across there.
You say middling, what's the middling?
This part of the hog.
The ribs? The ribs?
Yeah. The middle part.
Did you told me one time before about putting stuff in lard to keep it.
I have known my mother to fry steak, like round steak, fry pieces of steak, because we didn't have refrigeration. And when my dad would kill a beef, we would take a quarter, he'd load the rest of it up in his wagon, and he would go to General Strickland's at Broadway Rights and Forrest Johnson's or somewhere, or the Cox's, and he'd give them a quarter of it. When they killed, they would do the same thing, because you can't use, that much beef would ruin it before you could.
There wasn't any sense in letting it go away.
Beef. So that's the way they did. People were a lot different back then. Your word was your bond. My daddy always, that was his, if he ever told you he would do something or he wouldn't do it, you could count on it. You could count on it. Because it wasn't going to happen or it was going to. He didn't believe in any other kind of guarantee. He didn't believe in signing. You shook hands on it.
How about you, Mr.
And that's it.
Ready to trade in those rims of yours?
Even if it cost you something.
Even if it cost him something. And if he said he would do it, he'd do it.
Well, Charlie, you know I like my glasses.
Or if he said he wouldn't do it, he didn't do
Keep
it.
my nose company.
He really was a man of his word.
With these.
And he was as honest as the day is long. He really believed in working, and I think he believed if you didn't work, you didn't eat. Because we all had to like to eat, and we all had to work.
Well, Granny, speaking of work, when did you get your first job outside of the farm? How old were you, and where did you go to work?
Well, for a year or two after I graduated, I stayed on the farm. After I graduated from high school. And oh gosh, you don't know about my first job, but it was down at Colesburg. It was
tell the
down at
truth now.
Colesburg, running a little store. And it was one of those nice places where you, every morning you got up and you hung chenille bedspreads on the line and beautiful chenille robes. I did that every morning.
Rugs.
Rugs. Oh, it was a lovely place. It was just a little hole in the wall right down in the small. But it was on 17. There was a lot of
You had
traffic.
you had the candy.
Oh, yeah.
Granny, where was this you worked at?
It was at Colesburg,
Colesburg.
Well, I mean,
Georgia, just beyond Woodbine.
what was it? What
It was
did?
a mercantile.
Okay.
No, it really wasn't. It was a commissary, actually, is what it was.
Actually, I think they had, what was the name of it, Mama?
It was Baker's.
Baker's.
They had a mill there, and a lot of the work was to the mill hand, you know, the ones
It
that
was
worked
more
at
like
the
a
mill.
general store. Sort
It
of.
was a general type thing, but it was not a lot of stuff in it, really. Because there was a store, a big store in Colesburg that had everything.
And
But
that's what I was thinking about.
he started off just a place for the men and their families that worked there with the mill.
It wasn't a company store, was it?
Yeah, it really was. I sold my soul to the company
I mean,
store.
they took credit and all from the men at the mill?
Yeah,
And they just took it out of their check, or
yeah. Any way they wanted to do
it was
it.
a company store?
It was a company store. I lived with the people. I lived with the Bakers. You remember the old motel that A.D. Harold lives in White Oak? That little old hotel right there on, you know A.D. He worked with pipe fitters.
Oh, Harold?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
He lives in an old hotel right there on 17
I didn't
and
know
White
that.
Oak. And that's the old Baker Hotel. And it was her son and his wife that I lived with at Colesburg. They were wonderful to me. I thought it was great. I had a room, all pretty room, all to myself. And you know, I'd never had that before. And I thought I'd really grown up. Well, we won't talk too much about the rest of the
Growing up.
growing up. Anyway, I fell in love with someone there,
Remember Johnny B?
and they were working,
I was taking the dirt.
they just gotten out of college, was working at Brunswick Peninsula, and he went to service, and I came to Brunswick, and it was a whole new story for
The
him.
rest is history.
The rest is history.
What happened when you came to Brunswick? What did you do when you came to Brunswick?
I came to Brunswick, and I worked at S.H. Crest
What did you do?
on Newcastle.
What did you do?
I dressed windows, if you please.
You were a window
I
dresser.
was a window dresser.
Were you good at it?
I thought so.
Then they tell me there's a team.
And I did that for several months. I didn't stay there long. I had made the application to Southern Bell.
Back up.
Call and I find out.
Um,
Hot shot.
Wasn't there a certain fellow that said
You.
he found his $1 million baby in a 5 and 10 cent store?
You're absolutely right. And that same fellow lived with that baby for 54 years.
Is that where you met Papa? Was it
I
Crest?
didn't meet him there, but that's where I was working.
That's where he
Guarantee he'll take it.
And he always said he found $1 million baby in the 5 and 10 cent store. There was no song you probably heard. So that was
Tell us about
everything all those years.
Tell us how you met this gentleman.
Now that was not history yet.
How did you meet Papa? We won't hold it against you. It'll be.
It's a long story. I was dating his best friend. My real love had gone to the Pacific.
So she was.
And that was Papa's best friend that was in the Pacific.
Mm-mm.
No, that was
Papa didn't like.
Oh, there's another guy involved.
But this guy was cousin to the people I was living both with. And you know, we were just good friends. But anyway,
Hey.
one of my cousins came to visit me, and actually came to live with us. And she had gotten a job over in Brunswick, and so I asked him to bring, we were going to Louis that night, and I asked him to bring someone along, if there was somebody he could bring to go with Bill, and he did.
Let's go.
And so he did. He brought his granddaddy. And that's the end of that.
So he was going out with you that night and brought granddaddy with him?
And to go with my cousin.
With your cousin. That was a mistake, wasn't it? For him.
Well, describe Mitchell.
When you first saw him, when you first met him.
Crazy. Absolutely, totally off the wall. Never had I known anyone like him. Still have never known anyone like him. But I was totally smitten by him. Totally.
Well, you know, there's this.
When did you,
And we,
what did he look like?
Had curly hair.
was very nice looking.
You know, tall. You know, where's the train?
Tall, blonde, reddish blonde hair, bright blue eyes,
Wavy.
crazy personality, just crazy, something silly, something just, I had always known serious people, and, you know, I thought, golly, this is a nut.
What did that nut tell you his name was?
Mitchell Oscar.
He lied to you, didn't he?
How many
It
times?
wasn't the only
How many?
time.
How many times did he lie to you?
Oh my gosh, you mean in a lifetime?
No, the first few months. First of all, how long did y'all go together before you got married?
We only went together 3 months and got married. Well, people told his mother not to worry about it. We wouldn't be together 6 months.
Well, how old was he?
Yeah.
He was 19.
How old
I was
did he tell you he
21.
was?
He told me he's 22.
When did you find out that he really wasn't 22?
When we
he was
went to get
19?
our marriage license, and that's when I found out his name was Harrison instead of Oscar.
You didn't know he wasn't 19 and his name wasn't Oscar until you went to get your marriage license.
No, because the guy, I never saw the guy again, and he never spoke to your daddy again, so nobody told me he was just too young.
So you married him anyhow?
That boy never spoke to that. He would speak to me, but he never spoke to daddy again.
He was a great chap. He never did.
Y'all be good now.
Well, tell us about. I'm getting a real scoop here. Tell us about y'all. I mean, y'all. You said you dated for 3 months.
We dated for 3 months.
Well, when did you know that he was the one that you wanted to marry?
First night.
Probably immediately.
Because he was so different. I mean,
He was
just
just different. He was just different. We went to the movies, and honest to goodness, you know, there was someone sitting between us, and we were constantly talking to one
It was
another.
that other guy that won't speak anymore, wasn't it?
It doesn't matter.
So y'all,
But we
where did y'all
got
get
married and
married?
lived together for almost 54 years.
Where did y'all get married?
We got married at the family farm in Camden, the old place.
Who did the ceremony?
J.G. Ivy, a Methodist minister, performed the ceremony. We got married late sundown one afternoon.
In front of the fireplace?
Fireplace in the living room.
What did you wear?
A dress.
I mean, obviously it wasn't
No, it was a special dress. It was during the war, and you didn't go get bridal dresses with trains, but it was just a street length dress. It was a royal blue or a navy blue with a white dot and a big accordion pleated collar, double breast, you know, collar. A big old white picture hat.
You had the hat, didn't you? How about Papa? What did he wear?
I think perhaps a white coat and dark pants. I don't believe it was a suit. It was a dark coat and dark pants.
Did y'all exchange rings then, or did
Yes, we did.
Samantha?
y'all were high class? Because everybody didn't have the money to exchange
But he
rings.
went hot and got them, and I got
Crazy
one.
man went hard.
Well, how long y'all married?
54 years
54 years.
The one that gives
On a 3-month
courtship.
courtship.
this color comes out my eyes.
Well, so much for long courtships.
I don't recommend it, really. I prefer that people know one another longer than that. before we get married. But
Okay, you qualified it.
It happened to work for us. But anyway, shortly after we were married, it was during the war, and he went into service. He was in the Army. He was in the quartermaster's transportation corps. He was really blessed and spent most of his time overseas, all of his time overseas in England. Behind the lines, really. Of course, they had some rough times.
Tell them what a quartermaster was.
Well, it was shipping troops and supplies.
You see, he made the supplies, got it.
He's the one that signed them out and moved them out.
He'd make sure that if they sent them in, he had to make sure that there was enough food, clothes, ammunition, whatever. He had to make sure all that.
But I mean, his work was all inside, in an office and warehouse. And he spent a lot of time. He had typing in high school, and so that helped him a lot. And that's what he did during the war. But he spent about 3 years there.
Well, tell me about my granddad. What kind of man was he? 2 more little questions I've got. First one is, did my papa love Jesus?
Your father loved Jesus. He loved Jesus and knew about Jesus long before I did. I probably came to know Jesus really because of your father and his mother. But yes, he did love Jesus with all of his heart. He was like the rest of us. He did things that he would be sorry for. But he also knew that because he knew Jesus, he could ask forgiveness of him. And he was forgiven. And that was the end of that. And he could get on with his life because he always knew he'd be there for him.
You tell me about your salvation experience. We'll wrap this up.
Actually, some of my most tremendous experiences with the Lord were as a child during the really bad times. For instance, during my mother's illness and death, I felt I knew that there was someone. I knew that there was someone there with me. I was not, let's say, church like you were. I didn't go to church and I didn't go to Sunday school. We always had scripture in our house. It was always there. We could pick it up and we could read it, and someone might even read it to us. I don't really, remember that because everybody was always so busy. But I didn't have any Sunday school training or any of the things that you've always known. But we always knew that there was, as I think I said earlier, my dad believed in living by the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And it was just more or less an inbred thing with the kind of life we were living or were raised, that that you did have to put your trust in a higher being. And so in some of my as a child I can remember just really a strong emotions or feelings with the Lord. And during the time your dad, you know, we had married and was living in Brunswick and was in service, I started going to McKendree Methodist Church. He was a member there. Of course, I had, sometime in the past few years, I had joined the Baptist Church after I was grown, but I changed and started going to the Methodist Church because he was Methodist, and I was not living near the church that I joined anyway.
Hey, tell us about your salvation experience. How you got saved?
Well, I think I told you earlier that really, in retrospect and looking back, I can see and know that I had some very, very vivid experiences with God as a child. But I really had not been born again until much, much later. I guess I always thought you had to be a terrible person, you know, to have your sins forgiven. But I came to know that everybody needed forgiveness. And when my youngest child started to school, up until that part of my married life, I had not really had time. I had just concentrated on my family. And even though we had been in church, we had been going to church and Sunday school. But in the fall of that year, we had a revival at Arco Methodist Church. Simon Peter Clary was the minister, and his brother was the visiting minister, was doing the revival. And we had services in the morning and at night, and this was probably about halfway the revival. I came to see that I too had an intense need of the Lord to help me get through the rest of my life. I realized my inadequacy to raise my children in the way that they should be raised, and that I knew that I would do a much better job with his help. And so after a morning service, I felt this intense feeling of the Lord's presence. I went to the altar, and I went home, and I just had a very strong feeling that someone was coming. And I cleaned the house. Daddy was at work, and children were in school. I had to pick them up. But I cleaned everything, and then I realized that Christ was coming to visit me. And I dropped down on my knees by my bed and gave my life to the Lord. And it was the most awesome experience I have ever had. I cried for days. I lived in such awe to think that He loved me that much. I was totally broken, totally. And I was totally sold out. And from that day to this, He has been Lord of my life. I've not always pleased Him. There's been many times that I've had to say I'm sorry, but He's always been there. And without Him, there is no life. And my prayer all my life since then has been for my family, for my children, and my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, to know Christ. First of all, that is major. That's the most important thing that I can help to impart to them, to you. And God has answered these prayers so many times, and so many of my family. Not only in my immediate family, but in my siblings. I have seen God answer so many prayers. And you can know that He's faithful, because He's been so faithful in my life. And I wouldn't give Him for all the world. There is nothing in the world that could compensate for the grace that I've known in Jesus Christ. I heartily recommend it to you.
Hey, your house.
I recommend it to you. He is the way. He is the truth. He is the life.
Is there anything else you want to tell us or say, or any final thoughts?
There's nothing else to be said. If you follow Jesus, my prayers would be